Start with something small, a single number on a screen, a simple idea people agree to. It looks harmless, but then zoom out and that tiny thing becomes a lever, a permission slip, a shortcut. Zoom out again and it becomes a machine that decides who gets options and who feels trapped. Most people only see the small thing. That's why they miss what's really going on. Now, bring it back to you. You're probably working a job, chasing one, or building something after hours. Rent, bills, that quiet pressure that life is getting more expensive faster than you can run. And saving can feel like pouring water into a bucket with a crack. Then you see someone who's rich, and your brain writes the story fast. They got lucky. They cheated. I'm not built for that. And eventually, the darkest belief shows up. Maybe the game is rigged. Maybe it was never for you. But what if that conclusion is the trap? By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology of the rich in a way that explains the patterns, not as a worship, not as hate, as a model you can actually use. But I warn you, it won't feel comforting. It will challenge your beliefs. So, are you still with me? Good. Because the first clue is hiding in plain sight. Here is the quick context. Wealth does not just buy stuff, it buys time. It buys distance from consequences. It buys people who smooth problems away. And that changes how a human brain behaves. On the surface, it looks like they have more money. Underneath, it is really about power, emotion and incentives. So let's go clue by clue. Clue number 1 is the bubble. When money is high enough, your world starts agreeing with you. Not because you're right, because people need you. In that bubble, everybody has a role. Staff, employee, fixer, friend. People avoid telling you no. They laugh a little too quickly. They protect your mood. On its own, that sounds like comfort, but it changes a person. Either the rich become insulated, slowly losing touch with normal consequences, or they get trained to treat humans like disposable objects. That's why Fitzgerald's line still stings. The wealthy can smash things, then retreat into their money while someone else cleans it up. But this raises a bigger question. What happens when no stops reaching you? Clue number 2 is protection. When ordinary people mess up, they pay with stress, reputation and sometimes their whole future. When the sons and daughters of the rich mess up, there are often lawyers, publicists and powerful friends ready to catch the fall. Call it privilege, call it resources. Psychologically, it teaches one dangerous lesson. Reality is negotiable. Either it makes you brave or it makes you reckless. Because if your whole life trains you that rules bend, you stop fearing rules. But this raises a bigger question. If the rules bend for some people, how does everybody else keep playing? Clue number 3 is the part nobody likes admitting. Luck and risk. We love the clean story where success is all skill and failure is all stupidity. But real life is not that neat. Bill Gates was smart, yes, but he also went to one of the few schools in the country that even had a computer in the 1960s. That timing matters. And he had a best friend, Kent Evans, who is also brilliant and obsessed with computers, and then Kent died in a mountaineering accident. Same talent, different outcome. Or look at Jesse Livermore, one of the greatest traders ever, made millions, lost it, made it back, then lost everything again. Risk does not care who you are. So either you believe success is fully earned, or you accept the uncomfortable truth. Luck and risk are always in the room. And once you accept that, you stop worshipping winners and you stop hating the losers. But this raises a bigger question. If the world is not fair, what can you actually control? Okay, pause. This is where your mind pushes back. Cool, but what does that mean for me? I don't have money. I don't have connections. I'm not a genius. Hold on. This isn't about copying a billionaire's life. It's about seeing the rule under the surface so you stop fighting the shadows. Start smaller. Start where you can actually have a leverage. Your habits, your skills, your emotional control, and the problems you choose to solve. Because the next clue is where the story flips. Clue number 4 is the emotional bond with money. Most people glue their identity to money. More money means I matter. Less money means I'm failing. So money becomes a trophy or a threat. And that emotional bond makes people do dumb things. Spending to look safe, hoarding out of fear, flexing to feel respected. But the people who do best often hold a paradox. They respect money, but they're emotionally indifferent to it. Respect means learning the game, tracking it, negotiating, not wasting. Indifference means the numbers don't control your nervous system. Wins don't inflate your ego, losses don't erase you. And that's why capital flows to calmness. Calm people make cleaner decisions. But this raises a bigger question. How do you become calm in a world that trains you to panic? Clue number 5 is the difference between getting rich and staying rich. Getting rich often takes risk, bold moves, optimism. Staying rich is different. It is defense, patience, not losing. If you do not understand that, money can arrive like a wave and leave the same way. Think about Mike Tyson. He made over $400 million. Mansions, cars, exotic tigers, even a bathtub that cost more than most houses. And by 2003, he was bankrupt and millions in debt. That story isn't just about bad spending, it's a warning. High income is not the same as wealth. Wealth is what you don't spend. That's why a janitor like Ronald Read could quietly die with millions, while loud people with big salaries end up stuck. And he also explains the cruel truth of comparison. A $2 million bonus feels amazing until you learn someone else got $1 more. There is always a bigger fish. But this raises a bigger question. What separates the ones who last from the ones who collapse? Now we are ready for the big reveal. The secret isn't that the rich are magically smarter, and it isn't as simple as they're all evil. The hidden rule is this: money doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your psychology, and the psychology changes your behavior inside a system. For some people, wealth creates a bubble of yes people and protection that can breed carelessness. For others, wealth is built by traits that look cold from the outside, but function like tools: more self-focus, more internal responsibility, less neurotic fear under pressure, lower agreeableness, meaning they don't bend just to be liked, high conscientiousness, meaning they keep going when it's boring and lonely. And here is the uncomfortable part: those traits can build winners and also build monsters. The same calm that helps you invest can also numb empathy. The same confidence that helps you take risks can also become entitlement. So the psychology of the rich isn't one personality, it's a trait, and every trait has a price. So now, let's bring it back to your life. For most people, it was never about money, it was about freedom, time, peace, options, the ability to breathe. Money is a tool. The real prize is what it buys back: control over your day. But if money becomes your identity, it turns into a leash. Wins make you arrogant. Losses make you feel worthless, and you end up with never enough, even in a mansion. So here is the challenge. How long do you keep repeating the cycle? What belief do you need to unlearn? And what price are you willing to pay? Not just in money, in discomfort, in boredom, in saying no, in building skills where nobody claps. Because the world does not reward what you want, it rewards what you do repeatedly. So stop chasing the surface, stop chasing the image, chase the source. And if you made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. Comment one thing: are the rich different mostly because of their psychology, or mostly because the system protects them and shapes them? Pick one: psychology or system. Have a good day.